Okay, so here's part 2. Let's go to the 30-degree one and the 60-degree one. So similar as to we did on the last one, let's go ahead with the 30-degree one now and draw the same thing. We're going to, again, draw the rays that are 30 degrees. So they're going to have a reference angle of 30 degrees. So 30, what would this one be? This is 30 and pi over 6, right? What's this one? Well, if that's 180, this is 150, right? And you guys memorize them all? 5 pi over 6. This one down here would be 210 and 7 pi over 6. And this one over here would be 330 and 11 pi over 6. Okay, so those are all the ones that have a reference angle, 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees, 30 degrees. Again, we're going to draw that same dotted line and look at our triangle now. So this is 30. Here's my triangle. This has to be 60. We've got our 30, 60, 90 triangle, like we did on the page before with a hypotenuse of 1. Remember, it's a unit circle. And so what's the value of this side, the short side across from 30 here? That would be, well, let's look, the short side across from 30 down here, this side over here, so it would just be 1/2, and then the long side is going to be root 3 over 2. So short side here is 1/2, the long side here is root 3 over 2. So what are the coordinates of this point? Well, it's the x value, root 3 over 2, over, and then the y value, 1/2. And then I can repeat these same coordinates in the other quadrants. So for this one, it'll still be root 3 over 2, 1/2, but the x value is negative. Down here, it's the same ones, root 3 over 2 and 1/2, but they're both negative. And then down in my last quadrant here, again, root 3 over 2, 1/2, positive, negative. Okay? Before we flip to the other side and do the other ones, I want to talk about 60 because they kind of go hand in hand. 60 is the exact opposite of the 30s. Let me show you what I mean. So let's draw in our angles for 60. So here's 60, which is pi over 3. Here's 120, which is 2 pi over 3. Here's 240, which is 4 pi over 3. And here's 300, which is 5 pi over 3. Okay, if I draw in that triangle now, this is 60 here, 30 here. Remember, the side across from the 30 was always the one that was 1/2. The long side across from 60 is root 3 over 2. So notice my x and my y just switched from the one above. And so for this one, my x coordinate is going to be 1/2. My y coordinate is root 3 over 2. So everything is exactly the same except x coordinates and y coordinates are switched. So go ahead and fill those all in. And you've got all your angles. So now we just need to answer the questions on the other side, and you can kind of do a flipping back and forth if we need to. All right, so let's go over to page 10, and we're going to start evaluating. So example 2, here we are, is when we have the reference angle of 30. Kind of break that off there, okay? And so the sine of 30, well, let's remember that coordinate. Right, the coordinate was root 3 over 2, comma 1/2 for 30. So for 30, it starts with a 3. 30 root 3. And so this is cosine, this is sine, and they asked us for the sine of 30. So sine of 30 is 1/2. Okay, next one, cosine of 210. So let's find 210. Well, 210 is down here. Again, sine cosine, negative 1/2. Cosine of 210, negative 1/2. Nope, I just did that wrong. Sorry. Cosine. What did I do? Oh, I wrote those backwards. Ah! Sorry. Candy for everyone who's listening right now. Just kidding. You guys would all jump up, I'm sure. Cosine, sine, my bad. So the cosine of 210 is what we wanted, which would be negative root 3 over 2. I caught myself. I'll go get myself some candy in a little bit. Root 3 over 2. There we go. All right, tangent now. So tangent is just going to be sine over cosine, or y over x. So where's 330? All right, so here's my x, here's my y. I want to do y over x, negative 1/2 over root 3 over 2. So here we go. Negative 1/2 over root 3 over 2. The bottom one's going to flip, so I'll have negative 1/2 times 2 over root 3. They're going to cancel. I'll have negative 1 over root 3. I have to rationalize, and I get negative root 3 over 3. Cosine of 150. Well, you kind of noticed already the cosines are all going to be the root 3 over 2's. So 150, quadrant 2, cosine is negative, so it'll be negative root 3 over 2. Tangent, well again, the tangents are all going to be the same. So all of my tangents are going to be this root 3 over 3. But pi over 6 is in quadrant 1, so it's going to be positive root 3 over 3. The signs for all these are going to be the same, 5 pi over 6. So it's going to be 1/2. Sine of 60, or sorry, sine of pi over 6's are always 1/2. But 5 pi over 6, that's quadrant 2, so it's still positive. Cosine of 11 pi over 6. Again, the cosines are all going to be the root 3 over 2's. 11 pi over 6 is quadrant 4, so my x values are positive. Tangent 7 pi over 6. Again, tangents are all going to be the same, root 3 over 3. And the tangent, in this case, of 7 pi over 6, what quadrant is that? Down here, quadrant 3. So we have a negative divided by a negative. Tangent is positive. All right, so let's fill out this chart about reference angles. Okay, so the sines, as we saw here, sine was always 1/2. Cosine was always root 3 over 2. Tangent was always root 3 over 3. All right, so let's do reciprocals. Reciprocal of sine is just 2. Reciprocal of cosine, we got to work that out. So we'll get 2 over root 3, we'll rationalize it, and we'll get 2 root 3 over 3. Again, notice it's always plus or minus. Cotangent, again, reciprocal, 3 over root 3, rationalize, 3 root 3 over 3, cancel. You just get root 3. All right, feel free to pause this, go back, check what we're doing, figure it all out if you need to. Okay, last example here, example 3. Evaluating the following. Okay, so now we're doing the 60s. Now, what's cool about the 60s is everything from the 30s is just going to be switched. So the sine of 60 is just going to be the same as the cosine of 30 was. And so since the cosine of 30 was the root 3 over 2, that's going to be my sine for 60. And again, you can check it on our picture, right? So here was 60. This is cosine. This is sine. Okay? So the 60 degree, we have the 1/2 first, then the root 3 over 2. So it's the root 3 over 2 we want in this case. Cosines are going to be the 1/2. 240, that's going to give us a negative cosine because we'll have a negative x over there. Tangent of 300. So tangent's going to be the same as our cotangent was up here. So this is just going to be root 3, and you can work it out by hand if you want. But it's 300 degrees, that's quadrant 4, so tangent will be negative. Cosine of 120. Again, we're a cosine, so it's still going to be the 1/2. But it's quadrant 2, so cosine will be negative. Tangent of pi over 3. Well, pi over 3 again, tangent's just going to be the same. Positive because we're in quadrant 1. Everything's positive in quadrant 1. Sine of 2 pi over 3, that's 120. So our sines are root 3 over 2. That's y coordinate. In quadrant 2, it's going to be positive. Cosine of 5 pi over 3. Again, since it's a pi over 3, we're always, cosine here is always going to be 1/2. 5 pi over 3, I should just be checking my answer key here, sorry, is going to make a cosine positive because we're in quadrant 4, so x's are positive. Last one, tangent is √3, and since it's 4 pi over 3, that's quadrant 3, and tangent is positive in quadrant 3. All right, I think these are all right. So for our reference angle, again here now when we fill out this chart for 60 degrees, everything's just going to be switched than it was for the 30. So sine will just be what the cosine was, cosine will just be what sine was, tangent will just be what cotangent was, and vice versa. Okay, and again, the plus or minus is just dependent on the quadrant. Okay, so that's it for the notes, but now I'd like you guys to go to the practice packet, and we're going to fill in the rest of our unit circle.